I try to create a product that is so good that kind of like a mediocre go-to-market team can sell. And then I create a marketing and sales team that is so good that they can push a mediocre product. And then if you nail both, you have something that is explosive.
Hello. Welcome to another show of Built by Humans. This is an episode that I have been looking forward to for a while because, frankly, it's one of those situations where you look at a company and you're like, I just want to ask the people at that company so many questions and understand how the sausage is being made. Today, we had Amit Bendov, one of the co-founders and CEO of Gong, which is been a breakaway company in the kind of go-to-market sales and revenue software space, build an incredible product, incredible marketing, incredible fundraising. And so, I wanted to understand like, hey, how are you guys doing all this over here? This is a fantastic episode with Amit for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, especially being in the sales tech stack space, right? Sales and marketing. It's been impossible to ignore. One of the best marketing stories out there, really just an exceptional example of how to build a brand today. And so we really got to open up the box of secrets and dig into Amit a bit. So hope you guys enjoy this one.
Yeah. I think specific things that we talk about, just to give you a little preview, understanding the vision of Gong, which has been critical in their fundraising journey, early lessons related to marketing, competing in a space that is heating up. And so for me, a ton of strategic information in this conversation, and Amit's also just a great guy. And so without further ado, let's hear about Gong. Amit, what's going on, man?
Hey, it's great to be here, Scott. How you doing?
I'm good. It is great to be here. And wow, has Gong just completely exploded over the past couple of years. It has been so fun. I feel like I've seen you guys really at various phases of the company, from when you're just getting started at that first Dreamforce where we connected, to maybe a year or two later when you were on the Sales Hacker boat in New York City, kind of talking about those early days and getting those first 10 or 11 customers or whatever it is. And so huge congrats to you on all that you've accomplished so far.
Thank you very much. And same to you for being like a great partner for the journey. We're excited to see what you guys are doing as well.
Well, thank you. So just to kind of, ground the conversation. I feel like if you don't know what Gong is, you've been living under a rock, but maybe for the people that are not engrossed in the world of B2B SaaS and sales and marketing technology, what is Gong, so everybody can get some context here?
All right. Gong is a 5-year-old company. We're about getting close to 800 people, 2,000 companies. It's a SaaS that helps companies improve their sales and customer service by monitoring and understanding customer conversations, gleaning insights from that, and then providing ways to improve both the performance of the sales team and the customer service team. It's easy to use, and plus I think a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've used the product. It's amazing. It's kind of crazy to think about a world where you would have a conversation, and if it wasn't on your Evernote, you just lost it forever. There's an immense amount of utility in the product, which I think is one of the reasons why you guys have been able to go ahead and create a new category. And it's become one of those must-have purchases for any modern go-to-market team. Just to kind of dive into some topics I've been wanting to ask you. So I went on Crunchbase. You guys have raised $583 million. Is that accurate? That's what Crunchbase told me.
It's hard to track. That sounds about right.
Okay. So a lot of money. And just from a timeline perspective, I was looking. So August 12th, you guys raised $200 million at a 2.2 billion valuation. A little less than a year later, in June of this year, $250 million at a 7.25 billion valuation. I mean, what is the vision that you are telling investors? I got to know, because I know it's expanded beyond the core competency, which you guys have been known for so much today?
Yeah, the vision is autonomous applications, right? This is like Gong started like in 2016 by providing teams with insights about what's happening with their customers, right? Without anybody having to lift a finger. That was like the first idea. Like before that, you'd have to go either like speak to your manager or take notes in Evernote or in Salesforce or in Microsoft or whatever you're using in a CRM. So these are like applications where people have to do work to share information with the company. Gong automatically taps into customer conversations, right? And creates insights and knowledge within the company without anybody having to lift the finger, right? Think about Google versus Yahoo, right? For those of us who don't remember what Yahoo was, right? It was the Google at the time. If you wanted to know what are the top 12 pizza joints in San Francisco, there are actually people that are creating those directories, like on Yahoo. They have like a chief taxonomy officer, right? That people actually doing that. So Yahoo was a human curated system, largely. Google came and says, forget this. Like, I'm going to index the world's information like automatically and does something that's 100 times bigger without anybody having to lift a finger, right? Took people out of the equation, right? Yahoo is still there, but nobody's looking at the information that people are putting in, right? It's like Google is like the way to go. Gong does the same for customer management system. These are human curated system where people type in information, what happened with the accounts, what the probability. Gong does it automatically in a way that's like 100 times more reliable, accurate, and hands-free. And beyond customer management, there are other applications that we're planning down the road that takes the same concept of autonomous applications to take something that was like human curated before. We obviously can't mention all of them, but it's an infinite amount of applications where we can liberate people from stuff that they hate.
Makes sense. So, I mean, I feel like the two questions I have, you might not be able to reveal, but so today you guys are integrated with Salesforce. I don't know if you have a Microsoft Dynamics integration or a HubSpot integration. I'm sure you do, but you're built on top of the data store. Is there a world where Gong just is the data store? I mean, if you're an autonomous application, if basically you're just able to kind of dump information into fields and forms autonomously, presumably you can become the fields and forms at one point.
Well, we're already a data store. What the information that you have in the CRM is like, who are your customers, what they bought, what stage the opportunities, who are the contacts, phone numbers, name, addresses. That's there. That we may get into that, we may not. It's not like a big deal. But Gong stores like 100 times more information in CRM. If you want to know what's the latest with one of your accounts, that information is not in CRM. It's stored in Gong, right? So all that unstructured data, the conversations, the emails, the calls, who spoke with who, what's the sentiment of the account, that's not in the CRM and it's probably not going to the CRM. So that's like already like it is a store. Gong, some people say this is the new CRM. It's not really. It's not a CRM 2.0. Gong is better than a CRM. It's not a better CRM. It's better than a CRM at managing customers, right? It's a new category. It doesn't replace anything. It creates a new thing.
Got it. Not a faster horse, but a Model T, one might say. Very, very interesting. For me, I totally get it, right? Like there's so many details. At Troops, we're very focused on the kind of the system of human connection where, and you guys are too, just in a different way, where there's information that lives in a rep's head that you just, at least today, maybe with Gong you can, in terms of transmuting that information into a reportable format is very, very hard. And so we make that easier. And I think the thing that I noticed that is kind of I guess a little bit of a chasm between something like a Gong and a Troops, or we're going and we're taking things like a next steps or like, what's your assessment of a medic field or whatever it is. And we're, intelligently capturing that with the human inputting it, is you guys have all of that information, but kind of like cutting the wheat from the chaff, structuring it in a way that you can report on easily at scale for very finite, specific things is still kind of hard. And a lot of times I do think in sales, there is importance of human interpretation, right? Like I can tell you that whether or not like this person has met these sales criteria or these by questions that I asked where I have to like use my brain and analyze what happened and put it somewhere. And maybe just a transcription could do that, but maybe not. And so I guess for you, like, what do you see the evolution of, you have the underlying transcripts and data in a huge way. How does that evolve to help companies understand insights in a paradigm that we're more traditionally used to, like a report, for example, of that information, of certain data points?
Right. That's a great question. So I think you made a couple of points, which, I agree with both. First, there's still a place for human interpretation. Gong, we're not looking to replace humans, just take the stuff that they hate. And second, the technology still isn't perfect, right? So think of like a self-driving car. If there's you need computer vision for that, right? It might not be able to recognize everything that's going on the road. So it recognizes quite a bit right now. Like it understand maybe like the equivalent of like traffic signs or lights or pedestrian crossing, right? But not necessarily everything that's happening out there. So there's still like in the foreseeable future, there's still room for human input, and Troops definitely makes that like a lot easier. But over time, the system starts recognizing more and more attributes from the conversations. And at the very least, you could use it as a second opinion, right? Because there's stuff that humans can understand better than machines sometimes, right? But sometimes the other way around. If you hired a new rep, their interpretation of how exciting the deal is might not be the right one, right? They tend to have like happy years, right? Or some people do cherry picking. So we are all subjective. Plus, an average rep or a customer success manager, they manage like dozens of accounts like at any given time, sometimes hundreds, right? They can't possibly dedicate an amount of time to really understand all the nuances of that. So AI can actually do a much better job. Now, to the second part, so how do you create the insights, all of that? First, there's like a one-on-one. If you see an account that is like going south, then the system can alert. But if you have like, 1,000, right? 1,000 interaction or 1,000 people or 1,000 accounts or thousands, right? Now you can ask higher order questions like, okay, so what makes the successful account successful? What are the differences? What are the drivers that actually make them more successful? What helps a deal run faster? And then you could generalize that and train the entire team to get better and understand the things that are really making an impact.
So, Amit, I think you're touching on a really interesting point here, which it is kind of similar to the autonomous cars, where a lot of people are talking about how one of Tesla's biggest advantages is the fact that they just have so much mileage in their system, so much data around how autonomous vehicles should work and just practice how they have been working, that they're miles ahead of the competition. Is that something that's similar with call recording and digesting that type of data? Like, is that a part of your moat moving forward? Is just the amount of market share that you can acquire and then therefore the amount of calls that you can actually analyze?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, there are multiple components to moats, but definitely like having large data sets is key. And Gong is by far the largest data set that we can learn, the largest diversity of types of companies and from industries, small, large, languages. So all of these are take time and effort to develop, right? If you just think about a company that has like multiple languages and accents and types of products. So that's definitely like an advantage. But the real advantage, is to think that there isn't a moat, right? You just like the moment you think that you have a moat, you're kind of done. Like these days, it's very easy to develop. So we always have to keep running. And we're always like, we try to keep the product like miles ahead of anything that's out there. And we don't assume that any advantage has a shelf life of more like 12 months. Right? whether right or wrong, but that's kind of like a working assumption. That's always our mindset. Run like crazy.
Love that. So that brings another question that I have, like, in terms of 1 to 2 years from now, what opportunity or evolution of this kind of space of revenue intelligence are you most excited about?
Well, it's hard to pick. There are a lot, but first, we've got a lot of parts that are in development, including new products that are complementary to what people are using today. But we believe that in 2 years from now, revenue intelligence is going to become the main platform for running revenue teams. Again, it does not replace CRM. It does not replace engagement system, all of it. It's a system in and of their own. And today we have a good number of our customers that would say probably if they have to choose the last system that they're gonna ditch, it's probably gonna be Gong or something like Gong, right? And not everybody. And we believe that's that's the future. Think about Google versus Yahoo. So autonomous system versus human curated system in CRM. People are going to use CRM for understanding their records, a system of record for who bought, what their context, all of that. But to know what's going on and what to do about it, you're going to use a revenue intelligence system.
Makes sense. What is one way that Gong, I always like asking companies are hopefully the best users of their own product when they are really pushing the edge in the most innovative ways. What do you think is something unique or valuable that Gong does with Gong that you think more companies should be doing?
Well, there are plenty. I'll tell you one thing that is, we use Gong for product management, right?
Yep.
One benefit of Gong that we didn't anticipate was kind of tightening the relationship or the collaboration in product and sales, right? Because one way to increase your revenue is to improve the productivity of the sales team, right? People say, here's how you should sell this way. And people tend to focus on the sales team. But let's face it, if your product isn't competitive in the market or isn't exciting to buyers, your sales team is going to have to work a lot harder, right? So people don't think about, I always like to invest dollars in engineering, right? And solve a problem once and for all versus having every salesperson learn to sell around it. So with traditional models, it's the salespeople that talk with the customers. Product managers don't even know what customer want, right? Sometimes they'll get on a call, 1 or 2, and they're fed by the reps, right? And the reps tend to focus on the last deal that they've lost. Oh, they didn't buy because the competitor had this or that, right? Now, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. And it's definitely a very subjective and not a scientific method, right? With Gong, product manager can really get a lot of customer input in a sales interaction, but they also use it for the product. Our product manager would do customer interviews. So let's say if Troops is a user, right?
Yep.
They'll call your sales operations people or your CRO and says, hey, how are you using? We're thinking about this or that. You get the feedback and then share it with the engineers, right? That are actually developing the product. So that creates a much better product that people want to buy, right? And makes the sales team more successful. And that creates that virtuous cycle.
That's awesome. We actually, in the early days of our company, we used to make engineers watch 1 call a week and then share their learnings in our all hands. And it was a really good way to just develop empathy with the market.
Love that. That's brilliant.
Which I thought was really cool. So switching gears a little bit, I think the other thing that Gong has been prolific in that I personally love talking about is marketing. You guys have built such an incredible brand, created a category synonymous with call recording. And I sometimes I feel like Gong is used as a verb, right? I gonged the call, or, I listened to a Gong call, and they're just talking about their call recording. And so if you were starting, let's say, Gong becomes the next Google, you decide to start another company in the sales and marketing space or just a SaaS company. What are the lessons you have learned with Gong's marketing the one or two most important things that you would tell a founder to do, or you would do yourself in the early days?
Well, I think that first, like our CMO, Udi, she's phenomenal, and I go back like 3 companies. So what you're seeing, it's not what we've learned at Gong. What you're seeing in Gong, what we've learned like at prior companies. We're still learning, and there's like stuff we're trying for the first. But first, hire someone that knows, right? Just hire a great CMO. If you're an engineering founder, just hire someone that knows, right? This is not. It's not a side job. People think of marketing as advertising, right? Getting more leads. It's much more than that.
So like, it's very common advice to be like, I'm going to hire like, an up and comer who's like scrappy and can get shit done. And I don't want to hire super senior because they don't want to actually do anything. And, that's one school of thought, but it sounds like you're saying experience is critical.
I come from a different school of thought, although there are successful companies that tried like the other playbook. The most important, especially like in early stages, right? The most important thing is like do the right thing, right? So you could have someone who's like, kind of like a rookie that is like hungry and scrappy, right? Spending a lot of cycles, right? Running in circles, but not doing the right things that actually make the difference. So the question is like there are hundreds of things that you could do to do the right thing. If I have a CMO, right? I'm not saying that, don't take this literally, but all they do is say like, here's the right thing to do, and then don't do it and hire like 2 people. They'll do that thing, right? It's way more valuable than hiring one person who's scrappy. It'll work like 27 hours a day, but not do the right things, right? So this is like, and in startup, you need to show results quickly because that sells everything. Your leadership positioning in the market, your ability to raise money at reasonable valuations, to hire top talent. So I would not skimp on that. Of course, you need to have the product behind it because I tried like my approach has been that I try to create a product that is so good that kind of like a mediocre go-to-market team can sell, right? And then to create a marketing and sales team that is so good that they can push a mediocre product. And then if you nail both, you have something that is explosive. But yeah, I like to hire people that know what they're doing. Of course, they have to fit a culture of an early stage company. They have to be, but they don't have to be scrappy. Like, so what? Like, they hire a person or 2, but have them like do the most thing, and it's okay. And the second is Gong is, some people would say like pretty bold or adventurous, or sometimes we're taking risks. Right, we're taking a risk with stuff. So we're taking a risk. If you look at our logo, not in today, it looks a little more decent, but in like 5 years ago, when you and I met, Scott, it didn't look like a logo. And people said, "What the heck is this?" Right? Or even the name, kind of like it didn't have like their companies like with sales that kind of describes what they do. Right? What it does, it grabs attention. So when you're starting, your biggest risk is actually that nobody gives a damn, right? You're a very excited product. People are hearing about 1,000 other things, and you need to stand out, right? So the directive to the designer was like, if I go to a conference and there are 30 logos on a banner and I stand like 20 yards away, I want to see our logo like from 20 yards, like right there. This is the most, and I don't care if people hate it or love it, right? So be bold, or if you want to summarize it, like being safe is risky, and being risky is probably taking a risk is probably your safest option. You've got nothing to lose.
I think this is so important for B2B companies to hear. And, look, I admire that you guys have done that early on and have that belief, because I just see it so often. And frankly, I see it in some of the things we do where it's like, everybody's just kind of doing the same thing. It gets the same results. Right. So I admire that sense of just boldness and making bets. It's the name of that's startups.
That's the polarizing stuff is the sweet spot, right? There's some people will love, some people will hate, right? If you look at our website, people say that's not very enterprisey, or some people are not like it, or some people find it offensive, right? But the one thing it does, it gets people to talk about it. There's an attitude, right? There's people feel about something versus something that doesn't grab attention.
I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this question. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. We obviously all saw the ZoomInfo acquisition of Chorus, and I was honestly pretty excited on that day because it was just like two companies that I respect. I mean, they came together and it just made the competition more interesting because, frankly, it felt like you guys were pulling ahead pretty heavily at the time. So I guess my question to you is, has the strategy changed at all? And if so, what are some considerations that you would make when a market competitor makes a move like that?
No, the strategy is not changed at all. It's the same. It could have, but based on what we're seeing right now, and it might in the future. But right now, there is no change. So there's we're not happy to see Chorus go. They've been a good partner for the ride, and although you compete, they help us educate the market, and they've been and I wish them all the best in their new home. But Gong we choose to be the best product out there. The other solutions that are cheaper, right? And we tell the customers up front, right? If what you care about mostly buying the lowest costing or the budget, then there are other solutions that are okay. Gong is the best. We invest the most heavily in engineering. We always pushing the envelope with the product and our customer service. And our sales team, you are exposed to the largest and richest customer community. That's what most people use, right? And we're determined to be number one, right? So it's kind of like the iPhone, right? There are other solutions that are fine, right? But it's like the iPhone of sales, and that's the clear definition. When companies get acquired, the product usually doesn't become better. It becomes cheaper. It becomes part of something, but kind of innovation isn't there. So our strategy actually the same. We're still the best products, and that's what we enjoy doing. We love having the best. We love having customers rave about it, and that's the strategy. So we don't see it as kind of a new tune that we need to learn how to play.
I agree with you. Innovation generally goes to die when companies get acquired by big companies. It's harder to move quickly. It's harder to innovate. A lot of times, you get kind of bundled and obfuscated inside of somebody's core competency. You see this in just our space, right? It's outreach versus sales loft. You guys in Chorus, ZoomInfo, Lead IQ. I mean, you just see when there's product market fit, a lot of times there becomes, head-to-head competition in a lot of deals. What advice would you have for founders and revenue leaders in those scenarios as just kind of general best practices and ways to get an edge if you find yourself in that circumstance?
I can tell what we did at Gong. And again, it's not disrespectful. It's like the others, but we did not want to be in a two-horse race. Right. We said, no matter what we do, we cannot and will not be. I actually have the recordings for our all hands call. When we started the company, we didn't even know that there are other companies that are actually, we were not first to market. We're probably third. There was Exact Vision and Chorus, but they're kind of in stealth mode. So we didn't know about it. And we thought, okay, we're creating a new things. And then we learned that there is. And I remember we had revenue goals for 2017 or something. And I remember the first all hands call, January 2017. And I addressed the company and I told them we only have one goal for this year, right? It's not revenue. It's not anything. By the end of this year, we're going to be the undisputed leader in the market, or nothing else matter, right? We cannot be in a two-horse race. We have to break away. It's not only that we say that we're the best, the market has to say. And we actually set KPIs, like inside the companies, we broke it down and what it means. We made like social media. So the marketing team actually said we had like product goals and we had marketing goals that we need to have like social media mentions like 2x all of our competitors combined, right? That was like the metrics, and we keep growing. So in SaaS, usually the market leader takes like 60% of the profits in the market, right? There is no second prize. If you see it like Salesforce, they're 20% market share in CRM, but they're still probably more profitable than other companies, or at least where, right? So we said, we're not working like 15, 16 hours a day for second prize, right? We have to be number one. And we're adamant, we'll do whatever it takes in terms like product. Always like we said, I started is like run, just develop, get closer to customers, invest heavily in engineering, invest in marketing, invest in sales, create the best culture, hire the most senior and talented executives that you can. And that's like win at all costs. And we saw that actually competition becomes easier. The strong get stronger, right? At some point, the market kind of like starts to understand who's the leader, and most people would want to buy from the leader, right? Whether the product is better or not. But for us, it also helped that it was better. And that's like, that's the lesson. So do not, whatever you do, you have to break away. It'll be hard to start. At the end, I don't know that we had an advantage over like Forest in the early days. Like I didn't know what it was. Like we were probably even like behind. We're like somewhat the less cool company. We're not in San Francisco. Our investors were a little less reputable. So we're kind of like even like disadvantaged. But we knew like, and over the years it became easier, and you can see the difference in valuation for what it's worth. It Gong's like more than 10x, right? And the revenues are kind of like about the same. That's what happened. So, but it wasn't like that in the early days. It was like first, like it was neck to neck, and then it was like back to neck, and then it was like it became like easier again. But we never want to become arrogant or overconfident. The competition is always there, and if you get relaxed about it, then that's like very dangerous. But you have to break away as quickly as you can. And that's the most important thing that you can do.
I have a couple of questions. So I think one takeaway for me is like, putting metrics in terms of like what being the market leader means, and specifically using like word of mouth availability, like social media mentions to discern that. What about like logos? Like I could see in that scenario, it to be very easy to be like, all right, we need to get the most market share. We are going to basically give our product away or put it at a super low cost just so we get that footprint and we can clearly corner the market in a more aggressive way.
No, that was like, not for us, right? That was what the other folks did, and it didn't work for them, right? It might work in some cases, like, I think Zoom used that strategy like fairly successfully against some of the incumbents. So it's not that this strategy is flawed, but that's definitely not what we did. So we wanted to remember our position is kind of like the best product, right? The best product is what people like, hopefully happy to pay for, right? If we earn the rights for their business. So we said like whatever we do, we have, and there are times where people were giving stuff for free or for ridiculous prices. To this day, we tell customers up front, listen, the other option will be cheaper and they'll do whatever it takes. We don't, right? We want to make sure that we have a product that actually creates the value, right? And if not, then, we wouldn't have a business. So our constraint was always that we have something that people are willing to pay for happily, right? And they might not feel that it's cheap, but just like some of the products that you buy.
That makes sense. I always like to think about the positioning can be so valuable. I always think about Palantir, where it's like Palantir positioned themselves in the market as like this crazy tech science, like amazing technology. In reality, it's like a consulting shop with some tech, but they created that market perception of like, this is who we are. And people believe it, what you tell them. Like, you have to tell them what you are against the competitors. And I think it sounds like you guys did that very effectively.
Yeah. And remember, like we're a SaaS, we're an annual contract, right? So you could fool people once, right? If people pay you, right, what you tell them, and if you're not the best, like next year they have other options, right? So it's not, you have to be able to deliver. So the things that we did not want to like fight a price war. And I think you see the successful companies are doing just that, because otherwise it's a race to the bottom. Because like if you innovate on pricing, that that's very easy to copy. The next thing, like the other one cuts you by 50%, and then nobody wins, right? Nobody wins in a race to the bottom. So you have to earn your value, right? You need to create value, create a product that is amazing, right? That people want and solves a real problem that is worth it. And then you ask like a very clear question, like, do you want your athletes to show up on game day with the best shoes or the cheaper shoes, right? Gong is the better shoes. And that's like, it's something that helps you achieve goals and helps your team become better. And like, that's our choice. It's definitely possible and legit that someone would come, something is like cheaper, maybe not as good, but cheaper.
Yeah, honestly, when I hear you talk about that strategy, I feel like it's something that's risky. Like it's a big bet up front, right? Because at first, like you were saying, you weren't even sure how much better you were than Chorus. You were the third to market. There were a lot of questions, but you had to make a decision culturally and as an entire team to say, hey, we are the best. You established that, you communicated to the market, and you basically manifested it. And so that's pretty impressive. I got to ask, in switching gears here just a little bit, what is something that you don't really understand well today that you are working to better understand? Like, what's a topic that you're really interested in learning more about?
Other than the meaning of life, you mean?
You and me both, man.
That's a great question. Like, I like every now and then I have like interesting themes, stuff that I kind of dive into and study, right? It could be like on a personal level or professional level. I like building organizations, right? This is like this is what I'm passionate about, and building team, and I always like study what are the best companies doing. And here's a tip, by the way. Like I learn a lot. Probably my most valuable source is job interviews. Like I interview like still like a good amount of, like in the early days, like everybody in a company, everybody, like and like now it's like fewer people, but still a good amount. And over the years, like thousands of people. And always like I go over their career and ask them, oh, so they work like at A, B, and C companies, ask them like, what was it like? And you hear the stories from people that are speaking very fondly about companies that they've worked in the past, and people are very bitter about companies they've worked with in the past, right? And you never know. Sometimes maybe someone wasn't really good, but if you hear like 5 people talking, it's kind of like a Rashomon story, right? If you're like 5 people from the same company praising kind of like the CEO or the leadership team or the culture in a company, you get a good sense, right? And over the time, you develop this kind of database in your head. What makes some companies successful? And again, it's not one thing. Companies are good in different ways sometimes. But that's a good source for me. And I spend the time to learn, obviously to interview people and to help them why they should work at Gong, right? But also I learned quite a bit from that. How you design an organization, how you create a great culture. And that has been like super valuable to me.
As a follow-up question to that, what is one company or leader that you currently admire in SaaS?
Well, I think like my friend Lee Godsey at Databricks is kind of like the Tom Brady of SaaS right now. He's doing an incredible job. I watch with awe, like incredible build and growth. Like that's an incredible job.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna kind of wrap this episode up here, but I guess my last question would be to you what advice would you give to yourself 20 years ago, now having, run 4 companies, done all the things that you've done? What do you wish that you knew earlier in your career?
I think the ability to zoom out is good. right? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Just kind of like, I grew up in a very small town in northern Israel, and my parents, until recently, live in a very small town. My mom was just like, we don't need to go to Tel Aviv. Like, we have everything here. We have like restaurants, we have the stores, we have things. So if you are in a small town, you seem to develop like a very like, your view is kind of like your surroundings. That's your world view, right? And if you generalize this, just up until like, a few hundreds of years ago, there are people who believed kind of like that the sun orbits Earth, right? But only when you are able to zoom out, it says, listen, this is like, we're actually not so meaningful on a galactic scale, or definitely like a universe scale, right? There is a lot more going on. We're not all that unique. So if you zoom out over time, if you look at the history of like, let's say like last 10,000 of years of human history, and not to mention like hundreds of thousands, right? Or zoom out geographically, you understand. You get a much better perspective of kind of like the laws and what else is out there and where you're placed and where the opportunities are. The same is for business. You might be running like a small business, but when you zoom out, you're able to see many more opportunities. You're able to get like a much better perspective. So I wasn't thinking nearly as big 20 years ago, not even close. 20 years are probably like managing an R&D team writing code, right? That was like, I said, wow, this is amazing, right? I couldn't imagine kind of like running a multi-billion-dollar company at that time.
That's great advice. One of the things I've heard about Mark Benioff that makes him such an amazing leader to his direct lieutenants is how much he pushes on them to think bigger and expand their vision.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Is there a particular moment that you can think back to when you really like made that transition? Like, is there a person that pushed you to think bigger or zoom out? Like, when did it all click where you were like, whoa, like, I'm really not thinking big enough.
It's an evolving thing. What I've learned like over time is to click that zoom out button like multiple times, because I always like try to zoom out. Even when I was a child, I remember myself, I was reading about the great empires in history. I was trying to learn like quite a bit, but every time that I zoom out, right, I say like, hey, have I zoomed out enough, right? And then do like more and more and more, right? And then I say, okay, this is like way too much. Let's go back. Let's zoom in, right? So kind of like that skill of zooming out is evolving over time.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. And I think on the day-to-day, it resonates with me immensely, because I also think about a lot like a lot of times when things happen to us, like we don't see the totality of the situation because we're so in it. And so, zooming out in that regard can be incredibly helpful as well. So thank you for sharing that with us. But Amit, this has been so fun, man. Gong, you guys are all over the place. The blog, LinkedIn, like, where do you think is the most exciting place to check out Gong if people are interested in learning more and following along with the ride?
Well, I think LinkedIn is a good spot. We're actually like ranked like number 2, I think, for like our LinkedIn presence like last week, which is like pretty. Yeah, people saying like we can't avoid you on LinkedIn. Like now we have it official. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but probably helps with the talent acquisition. But yeah, check out our either like myself on LinkedIn or the company, and there are other great people at Gong. Just would be happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you on the next show.